Before we begin, 3 messages. When my company needed to develop a key mobile product, one that I was counting on as a new source of revenue, I knew exactly who to turn to. Macadamian. They delivered on time with incredible attention to detail, and I was able to get product into customers' hands faster than I ever thought possible. I've personally known them for 10 years, and they do make great products even better. Check them out at www.macadamian.com. Here's a riddle. How do you build native cross-platform mobile applications quickly without having to rewrite code and hire consultants at a huge cost? Titanium from Appcelerator. Called the easy button for mobile application development, it allows you to focus more on what's important, getting product out the door. Join the more than 1.5 million active developers who have created over 13,000 apps at www.appcelerator.com. So, you've taken some of the advice that has come from Untether.tv guests, built an app, and now you're turning your attention to generating some hard-earned revenue. Then you should be looking at Pontiflex App Leads. Some of your peers who are using App Leads are earning CPMs 100 times the industry average. And if you need any other reasons to start, I'll give you 2 more. You can run sign-up ads from top brands, the ones that you recognize, and it won't take your precious users out of your app. Go to appleads.com, that's appleads.com to sign up. Hello everybody, welcome to Untether.tv. This is of course the place where we actually have long, casual conversations with mobile rock stars. My name's Rob Woodbridge, your host, and I am joined today from Boston, Massachusetts. I'm joined by Pankaj Gulati, who is the CEO of a company called MoreMagic. And MoreMagic, in layman's terms, in simple terms, is a mobile commerce and financial services provider. But it goes a little bit deeper than that, and I'm going to get Pankaj to explain it to all of us in 1 second. But what I hope to get out of the session, and I hope you guys get out of the session who are watching, is a deeper understanding of some of the trends that we're seeing around mobile commerce and just transfers and commerce and payment systems in general around in the mobile space. This is a very, very, very active area, and MoreMagic has been around for 10 years. So we're going to get a glimpse of somebody who's actually grown up during doing this, and you know, if you just take a look at, they've got 120 mobile operator partners, and they're in 60 countries, 150,000 retail partners, as well as I think they've done somewhere in the like 500 million transactions or it's pretty incredible, the history and the information that we're going to get from Pankaj. So we're going to put aside the fact that we're about to enter Game 4 in the Stanley Cup Finals, and we're going to come at this on a professional level. Agreed, Pankaj?
Absolutely, although hockey is also a professional sport, and I have to say my 2 cents worth here that the big Game 4 is coming up tonight. We are riding high on our big win from Game 3, 8-1.
Yeah, that was ugly.
Looking forward to continuing the trend tonight.
That's right. Different perspectives, right? That was ugly, but it was beautiful from your perspective, and yes, so we will put that aside for the sake of helping mobile entrepreneurs understand what's going on in the mobile commerce, mobile payment space. So Pankaj, thank you for coming on and sharing your story.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to speak to you.
So why don't you just start by walking us through MoreMagic? You guys are a 10-year-old company in this space for a long time, and you've watched this industry bloom over that period of time. And really, it hasn't materialized quite complete yet. But why don't you? What is MoreMagic? I love the name, by the way. So what is MoreMagic?
Well, MoreMagic. The legend is that MoreMagic is the name of a machine in the MIT Media Labs. That even after you turn the power off, the lights would continue to blink and it would continue to do what it's supposed to do.
Nice.
I think it was a bunch of drunk kids who ended up working in the labs. For many nights together, consecutive, and so they ended up putting a label on this machine and called it MoreMagic, and
the
so
MoreMagic machine
stole the name from there. But in all essence, MoreMagic now, like you said, is a 10-year-old company. We have we've been some of the early pioneers of mobile payments. Started off in Scandinavia with partnerships with Nokia, Siemens, and so on and so forth. And really started to look at business models from the developed world perspective. So the early applications what we built were typical applications you would see around banking, paying your telephone bills, paying your utility bills, buying movie tickets or transportation tickets, and so on and so forth. Using, WAP typically was the method of interaction on a on a smartphone as described during those days. And we did very well. We deployed this technology with a bunch of different mobile operators in our early life, and we're looking to expand globally. We had offices set up in many parts of Europe, and then managed to set up an office here in the greater Boston area, in the town of Newton. And then, like you rightly pointed out, the market has seen a few bumps in the road, right? The first bump that we encountered was around September 11th. There was a lot of excitement and hype in the mobile industry before that. Funding was easy to get, with some bright, brilliant ideas. But really, that event dried up all kinds of growth funding for many different companies like ours. And we were very fortunate that we had already signed an OEM agreement with Nokia at that time. And Nokia, which really was the infrastructure side of Nokia, which eventually became Nokia Siemens, continued to deploy and take our product, so we scaled back on our marketing and sales process ourselves. But Nokia continued to sell our product and evangelize it, and kick the tires, and really helped us mature and prioritize our solution, our documentation, our processes, and so on and so forth. So it took a good 2 or 3 years for us to be able to then ascertain that we would like to go out and sell directly into the market ourselves. And when we, in the mid 2003, 2004 timeframe, we looked around the market, we said, well, premium SMS has become the dominant method of mobile payments, not a particularly innovative or creative way of charging for creative services. And I think that method led to the demise of a lot of creativity in the content business. But it was an easy way for the operators to be able to charge for third-party goods and services, particularly digital content.
Right.
And so we decided that we would look more carefully into the emerging markets in the developed world, where we recognized that prepaid was the method by which about 95% of a mobile operator's subscribers would buy airtime, and that the way they were buying this airtime was through a very archaic and a manual process of buying a physical scratch card, which had to be printed in some very cheap foreign country, with a printed pin at the back, which was secured, and you would need to scratch that card, be able to get that pin, and then eventually dial through an IVR, enter the pin, and get yourselves recharged. So we looked at that transaction, we looked at the marketplace, and we said, well, the killer application in the emerging markets is really the sale of prepaid airtime. And could we use our mobile payment platform to make that transaction a non-cash, or as electronic a transaction as we could? And so we walked into that marketplace, practically a greenfield opportunity, at least given our size, the markets that we were able to go to. We managed to deploy now in about 30 plus countries a fully electronic mobile top-up solution. And while you may look at that solution and say that you're selling airtime and it's only top up, and there are so many other companies who do top up, well, we had to figure out how to survive in this difficult marketplace. And there are things that you have to do in order to survive, and so this is what we did. We were a very sophisticated mobile payment platform provider, working in large developed world markets, especially in Western Europe and Scandinavia and North America. But the low-hanging fruit and the adoption for our products and services ended up being in the emerging markets. And so we rolled up our sleeves and we said we will take our mobile payment platform and go into the emerging markets world and start positioning this as a real-time processor of payments. And in this case, the application for which you're paying is prepaid airtime.
So let me ask a few questions about this, because you were fully entrenched. You started in Scandinavia with Nokia. Interesting combination there, because what was new technology in North America was not new technology in much of Europe and the Far East and Asia. But you looked over at North America, or you looked at the at developed nations and said, okay, so how can we facilitate transactions? How can we get into that space about actually allowing you to pay for goods on top of an infrastructure that is already existent, right? So that it's in simplified terms, it's a lot easier when you've got a banking system that you can attach yourself onto, or a purchasing process. So you went into developed nations, and then when things got tough, like 9/11 happened, and it was a brutal investment climate. Is that what forced you guys to look at and see what other opportunities there were around, as opposed to staying in the developed nation? I mean, must have been tough to do business at that point.
Yeah, it did become very difficult. I think there were 2 points of inflection for us. One is that we had a fairly large second round of financing that was, coming together around the September timeframe in 2001.
Yeah.
And so that very quickly disappeared. And so we had to scale back and figure out, who our customers are going to be that we need to target. And so So
that disappeared. That completely, like, it just fell off after, in the fall of 2001?
Yeah, I mean, we had the major players who were going to participate in that round step back. Our current investors in Battery Ventures were continuing to stick with us, and with their help and support, we managed to garner a second significantly smaller round of funding, and really scaled back, our plans in terms of, rather than going global and setting up a major footprint of sales and marketing and support and so on and so forth in various parts of the world. We made Nokia Siemens, or Nokia at that time, our primary customer, and because they were signing up mobile operators, so they were doing sales and marketing on our behalf, and we made it. We made sure that we were able to provide them with a quality product that they could deploy. So yes, I mean, I think we did the right thing in terms of, how to sustain and survive and move forward. And we continued from 2001 all the way up to 2004 to serve the developed world, primarily through our relationship with Nokia Siemens.
Yeah.
It was around 2004 timeframe that the climate improved for us. And we decided that there was a significant opportunity in the developing world that we could go after. Lack of banking infrastructure, this idea that the operator sells prepaid airtime, spends a lot of money in getting the cards printed, spends a lot of money in getting IVRs set up, and precious resources on their telephony network to get these voice trunks used for entering pins and recharging and so on and so forth, and then customer support that goes with it. All of this added to a significant cost item on their balance sheets. And so we decided that if we were to make this into an electronic transaction, we were able to demonstrate to this mobile operator that not only could they reduce their costs significantly by making this product electronic and available on a mobile phone, that their airtime could now be sold 24/7. Mm-hmm. That airtime could be sold in any denomination that the customer wants to buy airtime in. So if there is a $5 card or a $10 card in the previous generation of the solution, now you don't need a $5 or $10 denomination. The customer could walk in, buy a bag of chips, buy a bottle of water, pay $10, and their change, whatever that is, $3.73, could be loaded as airtime into their wallet.
So talk about what's the significance of that? So that does that allow more people to participate because they can buy in smaller increments, or did you find that they bought more or less, or why is that so significant that they could buy in not standard denominations?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and thanks for highlighting that point, because when you look at a prepaid buyer in the emerging markets, this buyer has limited funds, and they have a certain set of funds that they allocate every month or every week and say, I'm only going to spend this amount of money on purchasing airtime. And so they are on a budget. However, when you take this concept of denomination out of the equation, then a customer can buy, for example, in Haiti, where we are deployed today, you can buy a top-up for 50 US cents, right? In Jamaica, you can buy it for 40 US cents. So people can buy micro levels of top-up. And the reason why the operators can afford to sell these levels of top up now as against having cards is because there's a fixed cost associated with producing a card and distributing a card.
Right.
Not anymore. The price of a transaction that the operator has for selling top up now is basically a fixed price, and whether they sell a $5 top up or they sell a 50-cent top up, they pretty much know that the cost of this top up is relatively low. So I think from a consumer's perspective, not having a budget anymore and being able to buy a 20, 30, 50-cent type of a top up enables them to not be on the budget and enables them to have the flexibility to buy the top up whenever they need to buy the top up.
Yeah.
So we are seeing situations where people are buying top ups twice a day, for example, whereas they used to buy top ups, twice a month.
Right.
So I think from an end user perspective, that's one aspect of it. The second aspect is, you can imagine that they typically go to buy a card at a shop. And if the shop is closed after 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the evening, then they have to wait until the next morning to be able to buy another card and be able to recharge. Now they know that the shopkeeper has his inventory on his mobile phone, and that this shopkeeper is sitting in a bar, and they can go to that shopkeeper, at the bar and put cash on the table and buy recharge. So the service is now available 24/7. And I think those two factors from an end user perspective really helped increase the ARPU of the mobile operators. We have seen anywhere between 50% and 150%, just because the product is now available in a lot more locations, because the retailer obviously never runs out of inventory anymore, and that is an important point here.
Yes.
Because the card that sells the most is also the card that is out of stock the most, right? So if you are able to manage a perfect inventory management system where you ensure that the retailer never runs out of inventory, then the retailer can then they can create a product exactly at the time that the consumer wants to consume that product, right? So if a customer walks in and wants a $3.52 recharge, we can give them a $3.52 recharge at that time.
So that must have had, I mean, I think if you look at a kind of a microeconomic impact, it must have, or even a macro, it must have expanded the reach of the product to more people. So it's not going to cost you $5 or $10 to get in the game now. It might cost you 50 cents to make an important call, or to get some airtime, to get some prepaid airtime. So it must have expanded the reach of the product. But then, let me ask you: did it do that? Did it kind of bring more people in?
It certainly did. I mean, it is amazing. In one of the first markets that we deployed, I actually went to the shop at a distribution point for our mobile operator, and we had. And one might think that the older people have more difficulty in understanding and implementing these services. It is an incredible experience when you are able to give a promotion, to a person where you invite them to do a transaction, and you say, if you did this transaction, you'll get an extra 20% or 10%. And so through promotions and through very targeted marketing, the inclusion aspect of this was an incredible experience for everybody, and a huge surprise for everybody. And what that eventually ended up doing for everyone is that more than the consumer, it is the retailer who was reluctant to change their method of operation.
Sure.
And this service then enabled the retailer now to store over $1,000 US of airtime inventory on their phone, and feel that their inventory is secure, right? Their bank account is secure, and that is accessible through a PIN, and that every time they do a transaction, they get a confirmation message, they get their new balance, they can track it, they get a list of all of their transactions, just like you would get in a developed world market. You can go to a website and be able to check all your bank transactions. This is what people were able to experience through the use of their sub $20 mobile phone. Yeah. And what this did for us is two things. One is trust, and the other piece is education. This platform, this ability to be able to buy airtime, in a very ubiquitous and a trustworthy and a simple way, created this enormous ecosystem of thousands and thousands of retailers being able to just very quickly be able to sell recharges using their mobile phones, or obviously more sophisticated means like terminals and ATM machines at the banks and kiosks and so on and so forth. But a majority of these recharges were being sold by street retailers or shopkeepers who were able to put their full trust in the system. And that has eventually, after 2, 3, 4 years, enabled us to be able to deploy full-fledged mobile banking and mobile commerce and mobile payment platforms. Because now the retailer does know and understand that if they have, $1,000 of electronic inventory stored, then that inventory is not going anywhere. And the consumer fully understands that they can load cash in the form of electronic cash and then be able to store that cash for a period of time. They can do a P2P transaction to someone, relative or friend who lives 100 miles away. And then they are able to pay their utility bills and pay their government loans and so on and so forth. So, it has, to us, it has been a very rewarding experience. Maybe the lack of banking infrastructure and lack of sophistication and the need to really eliminate cash from the ecosystem. All of these drivers contributed to a very successful series of mobile money deployments for us in the emerging markets.
Well, and let's talk about this. I mean, when you guys, when you kind of look at the impact of something like this, because it can be huge, and you start to think about what you're doing. And the very first story that I read, it must have been in Fast Company, or I think it was probably Fast Company, about a woman in a small village in India that got a loan and started to bring cell phones into bring one cell phone in and allow somebody to make a call to talk to their relatives who they haven't spoken to in many years, because they would charge a few rupees for the call. And she started her own entrepreneurial enterprise that it started to bring a very large, very populous country much closer together as soon as this started to happen. And then when you start to talk about what you guys are doing, which are enabling small transaction prepaid phone, it might sound so innocuous or simple. But I start to think about situations where somebody pays 50 cents for a prepaid cellular activity, and they call to find out about a job, or they call to find out about prices of product or grain somewhere else where they can get a better deal. And you start to look at that across the country happening, and you're talking about a massive economic shift in everything, because it becomes an enabler. A merchant can make more money as a percentage. The person who's buying can have more opportunities. I start to think about the impact economically for a developing nation, and it kind of blows your mind what is happening here.
It completely does. I mean, I can share with you examples after examples. I mean, our flagship deployment is in Haiti, and we had deployed a prepaid top-up solution in Haiti about 4 years before, or 3 years before the earthquake. 4 years now, over 4 years now, and even around the time when the earthquake hit Haiti, in January of 2010, we had been experimenting with a mobile money solution in Haiti, where a retailer would have a stored value account, the consumers would have stored value accounts, and that people would be able to load funds into the stored value and then do P2P transfers, and then be able to send money across to their relatives and friends who could then cash it out, and so on and so forth. But when the aid organizations came into Haiti after the earthquake, it became a huge challenge for them to be able to pay their daily wage workers, right? All the development, cleanup and development staff that they hired locally, because most of the people in Port-au-Prince were on the street side now, right? They were living in these temporary tents in communities, and there was no way that these people could store their funds, their daily earnings, in a secure manner. You leave it under the mattress, you're gone, you don't have an address, and what happens? So people were literally living hand to mouth. And the aid organizations had this huge challenge where they're interested in not only people making money and being able to buy essential supplies and so on and so forth, but they're interested in people being able to save money,
right?
For future and so on and so forth. So our platform became one of the very viable means by which bulk payments and salary payments could be done. So every market has a need or a desire, and there is a trigger point. And in Haiti, the trigger point happened to be these large aid organizations had no way to be able to pay their employees, and so again cash became the enemy, and we deployed a platform with all the top up retailers who are out there in Haiti. We launched a service called T-Cash, telephone cash, where the mobile operator, the bank, and the technology provider, i.e. MoreMagic, we got together, and today we have a very robust ecosystem running there with micro lending companies have come in now, and they are participating in this ecosystem. People can load money on their mobile phone and buy airtime. People can pay their bills and so on and so forth. And the difference that this has made to people's lives is incredible. There are stories all over the place, but one of the stories is that this young lady, she's in the sewing business, and so for her to be able to go and pay a water bill or a utility bill, electric bill, is a whole day effort, because she lives about 2 hours outside of Port-au-Prince. She has to sit in a bus, close her shop down, go to a bank in the city. There are 2 bank branches for 180,000 people. The bank is closed during lunch hours. It's a whole day effort, and then she comes back, and all she has done all day is she's paid a utility bill.
Right.
And now, if she has the ability to load her funds by going to a shop next door where she used to buy airtime, and have those funds available on her mobile phone, the utility bill shows up in the form of a text message or a USSD message on her phone bill on her phone, and then she can just punch a few digits and pay for it. She doesn't even have to leave her household or her place of work to be able to do this. That is a value proposition that cannot be replaced,
no.
Right? And it huge changes in people's lives. If you look at large brands, they have a huge problem of collections in these emerging markets, right? For every truck that Coke or Pepsi or Saab Miller or British Tobacco they send out, they have to send an armored truck to be able to store the cash that they collect from these retailers.
Yep.
And so if a mobile money ecosystem is set up where if it is open loop or closed loop, it would not matter, but a merchant is able to receive in a very simple form an invoice on their mobile phone, and all they do is enter a PIN or something like that to confirm the payment. The truck driver would never have to carry cash. They deliver the product and they walk out, and settlements would be easy, and tracking payments and so on and so forth becomes very easy. So it's a slow process, but I believe that there are many such use cases that have come into play. The initial use case that everybody used to talk about was all about loading funds and being able to do a money transfer to your relative, 100 kilometers away, so that you don't have to spend 6 hours in a bus, to go and deliver those funds.
Right.
And so that was the initial use case. But I believe that there's a tremendous opportunity for large brands to be able to either build their own ecosystems or participate in some of these ecosystems and do B2B transactions. Another use case that is very interesting to us is the government-to-person payments. If you go into emerging markets, a very large, somewhere between 50 and 60% of government's payments to the daily wage worker disappear because of middlemen. And so if you are able to create an ecosystem by which a very large amount of that money does get to the end user, then you've solved a major economic problem. So financial inclusion certainly has kicked up, and there is a lot of trust and education that has gone around. We've been very fortunate that a large number of these ecosystems, not only ours but others also, have proven to be secure, and so there is very little non-repudiation issues and so on and so forth that have come up. And so we believe that with the support of the Gates Foundation and some other, Mercy Corps and others who have been very active in pushing some of these initiatives in the developing economies, has really helped. I mean, the data that we have in front of us is very exciting. For every 10% increase in penetration of mobile in a certain emerging market, the GDP of that country goes up by 1%. Just by having a mobile phone, right, and being able to communicate and so on and so forth.
So for every 10% penetration, every additional 10% penetration, their GDP of these nations go up by 1%.
1%, right? And so, there isn't any other stark sort of, correlation that you can draw other than the fact that, communication is so important to people, and because of such mass adoption, the cost of that communication has come down worldwide. So what we pay today here in North America on a per minute basis for airtime and for communication is significantly lesser than what we used to pay 5 or 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
And that is because of massive adoption in a lot of these countries. And so and that is just by making a mobile phone available. Now, if you can make a mobile phone available and be able to do financial transactions with it, and be able to find the best bidder for your crops, or be able to deliver health services and save lives, and so on and so forth. I mean, there are lots and lots of such initiatives that are already in progress, and it's a very exciting time for us to be in this industry.
You know what, Pankaj, it just sounds so great because, a lot of people, there's a term that people have been calling this, it's the unbanked. Those people who don't have a bank account, those people who are, a cash transaction society. And it's very interesting because in North America, we look at this issue. We're trying to optimize the way that we pay. So, there's a debate that goes on in North America right now is that 1/10 of a second difference between swiping a credit card or swiping your phone with NFC, which is the best way to actually pay for when you're doing a transaction. It just seems, we're majoring in minors, right? Because we've got a perfectly viable system here already that works, and NFC might not be the be all and end all that people think it is. It's going to be pervasive. But when you start to think about what's going on with the unbanked, with developing nations, those people who don't have a bank account, and how do you get those guys engaged, and how do you actually give them stability, financial stability without cash? Do you think that they are the ones, the unbanked, are the ones that are driving the mobile wallet? Because that's what it sounds like to me, is that when it comes to these kind of transactions, they are leading, and we're just kind of, as I said, majoring in minors, trying to figure out the most efficient way to use my credit card at a gas station. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're touching upon a very sensitive topic, right? I mean, we all live in the developed world, and now in some cases it's the emerging markets that are showing us how mobile transactions, could be done in a secure, convenient, simple, and a timely
effective way. Yeah, absolutely.
Very effective way, right? Very cost-effective way. Now, the reason why that those ecosystems are coming into place primarily because there are no banking infrastructures or almost non-existent banking infrastructure, in those countries, and clearly the mobile operator or the mobile phone has deeply penetrated those markets.
Right.
Now, I would beg to differ in terms of majoring in minors or that connotation here, because when you look at the developed world, I think the opportunity in NFC is, and we can all sort of draw an umbrella and say it is all about payments, but it is really not about payments here. The payment infrastructure in our part of the world is extremely mature. It is well tested, over time. There are regulations in place, there are procedures in place, and I don't believe that this infrastructure should be even displaced or changed in any way, shape, or form. I do think that the whole initiative about NFC and mobile payments is all about how do you get closer to your customer. If you're a brand, how do you figure out what your customers' buying behavior is,
yes,
or what they would like to buy? So my pitch to the emerging to the developed world is that payment aspect is just one of the 3 or the 4 steps of how this ecosystem in the developed world is going to come together. The first step is going to be all about, if you look at the coupon business, for example, in North America, right? All those coupons are completely manual process of redemption. So when a customer walks in, and I don't know whether the person who uses coupons is the right target for using a coupon on a smartphone, but
right.
At some point in time, there is going to be an intersection of these two worlds, whether it is for smaller payments or larger payments. But the idea that you are in a ballpark, and that you are going to spend somewhere between $200 to $600 because you came with your spouse, that's what the trip to a ballpark in today's day and age costs. And so if you're having a smartphone and if you are pushed a coupon on the smartphone to say, well, you can buy your beer or you can buy a bag of chips or whatever, or even sports memorabilia when you are in the ballpark, then that is when the coupon becomes available. And as you are going through that baseball ballpark experience, at some point in time you would go and redeem that coupon at one of the stores within the ballpark, right? And so I think it is, and that would obviously fall under the realm of mobile commerce, right?
Yep.
Because you were given an incentive to make a purchase. You were delivered that incentive on a smartphone, and how that coupon was redeemed was you went to the shop which had an NFC reader, and all you had to do was point that coupon to that NFC reader, and you were able to redeem that coupon. Now, whether the next step of payment is done using your Visa MasterCard as you pull it out of your wallet, or is the Visa MasterCard information stored already on your mobile phone and you can use that? So that to me is a second step, but not a necessary step.
Right.
So that is step number 2. And then once you are within the system and the system recognizes who you are, then enough information about you as a consumer can be gathered to be able to say, okay, this is what your consumer behavior is. And look, we are now going to be able to provide some more interesting marketing and loyalty programs. So starting with coupons, going into payments possibly, and then having more targeted marketing and loyalty programs is what I believe this whole NFC ecosystem is all about. And payment is just one aspect of this. You can't make a transaction any easier than pulling out a debit card or a credit card from your wallet.
No, that's not where the battle is going to be fought here.
And then the cost of enabling this NFC infrastructure for a small retailer is going to be reasonably high. But there are going to be locations where having such NFC infrastructure is going to be very viable as part of a business model. So theaters, going to the clubs in the night, or ballparks, maybe even the Boston Tea and the public transportation and so on and so forth, and possibly parking locations. Cities and town councils may be able to make some of those investments in order to improve the consumer experience and encourage people to be able to pay for their parking rather than get tickets and so on and so forth.
Right.
So I think that is where this ecosystem is headed, and so I don't think it is about displacing your existing payment methods.
No, I mean, you said it. The key thing that happened in developing nations and with the unbanked is the fact that it became a convenience for them. So instead of, as you said, the woman who operates a sewing shop, not having to pack up and leave for the day and losing that day's worth of revenue, and then I think that the best way to translate that into a developed nation, like in North America, the U.S., or in Canada, for example, is that when you start to weigh the cost of NFC and convenience, I think of parking. I think of parking a lot for some reason, because when I pay for parking at a meter or at a machine, and I pay for an hour and I stay for an hour and a half, I've basically stolen 30 minutes worth of revenue from the city.
Yes.
So from a city perspective, if we built in a system that alerted me and I could pay directly from my phone where I sit, and a little notification came up on my iPhone that said, "Hey, your meter's out. Do you want to pay for another hour?" I mean, 100% of the time I would say yes, just pay. The city doesn't lose any revenue, and then they've basically doubled the revenue. I'm not stealing from them, and it's all done digitally, right?
Now you're stealing my thunder.
Yeah, exactly. So, but
because this use case, interestingly enough, does not require any NFC interaction at all. Right? Because here is, and we built a system in Ireland for mobile parking in 2002, which does exactly what you described.
In Ireland, 10 years ago almost.
Yes.
Yeah, nice. And I'm just see how slow I am, right? It's perfect.
It is not a question of us being slow. It's just that the regulation and again, the ability for us to be able to conveniently either find change or pay by credit card has dissuaded us from being able to be creative in this market. But the use case was very simple. The city and the town councils decided that, and Ireland, I think in 2002 or 2003, was the cultural capital of the European Union, right? So they keep moving the cultural capital around. Every major city in Europe gets 1 year to be the cultural capital. So the town councils in a few of those cities decided that they want to introduce mobile parking because the penetration of mobile in Ireland had exceeded 100%. So everybody theoretically had a mobile phone in the market. So the process was very simple. The city government they put out forms that people could fill out in grocery stores and other places, and just wrap those forms in an envelope and ship it across. And what that form captured was your license plate information, your credit card information, your mobile number, and then they would register you into their system, which was run by MoreMagic. And we would then take your debit card or credit card and pull out 20 euros and put it in a stored value account, meant only for parking.
Right. So prepaid parking card, basically.
Right. So now you are ready to park, and how you would access the system is by sending a text message or by calling a toll-free number. Right. No NFC, nothing very sophisticated. In fact, the first phase of the application did not even need WAP. Right. So we did
just over the phone system.
Very simple, right? Yeah. So you would send a text message, and you would say 1, 2, or 3, depending on whether you wanted 30 minutes, 60 minutes, or 90 minutes worth of parking. And we would send you a text message confirming that your parking was confirmed. And then 5 minutes before your parking expired, we would send you a text message and say, if you are still parked at this location, then please, if you would like to renew it, here's your reminder. Enter your PIN or send a confirmation with yes, and we would renew your parking. So what that did was, rather than you being, exposed in the sense that you would get a ticket of, 20, 30 euros because you overparked, you are now a very happy camper that, you extended your parking and that you never had to leave the convenience of your restaurant or your office or wherever you had gone, while you parked. And then on the other side, we delivered a system to the parking wardens who would walk up to the car, and they had a little scanning device. And as a part of that registration process, we gave people stickers that they could put in the windshield. So it just had a barcode, and so these parking warden application on a symbol phone would basically be able to read the barcode. Don't have to enter the license plate number or anything like that. So you read the barcode, and immediately the system would tell them whether this car is overparked or is parking still valid. And that made their lives very easy. It had a very nice printer associated with it, and you could print the part. And by the way, the system was capable of saying, look, you're going to get a ticket now. So here's your last reminder. You would like to pay. This is the time to pay, because otherwise you're going to be ticketed, right? So at the end of the day, the governments, by giving tickets, their collections improve significantly and they're high. They want to deliver an experience where they can cut their costs, where they don't have to have all these parking wardens walking around in 100-degree weather. And the consumer is happy that they are able to buy parking and they're paying for it and they have the funds to do. And if you were to run out of funds in your wallet, then we would pull out another 20 euros and replenish your account and so on and so forth. So
it just makes
very
sense.
Simple service, but something that has worked very well for us.
I just think about it because I've seen some arguments about this. And I think this is for general convenience, is that when it comes to mobile payments in general, is that facilitating something like parking, the city will ultimately lose a considerable amount of money in the tickets that they issue, right?
Yes.
Because the cities make a lot of money with those parking tickets. It's exactly what they, it's not what they are meant for, but they make a lot of money.
They do.
But I think that the overall economic impact of eliminating this whole concept, and this is how mobile can do it, the concept of 1 hour parking is ridiculous, right? The fact that you're limited to 1 hour, it's that you can only pay for an hour at a time. By enabling multiple hour parking and in creating a better user experience and creating a better customer experience, that neighborhood or that place where they're at could benefit from increased revenue, and increased convenience. You're not limiting it to an hour. People spend more money. The cities collect more taxes. So you start to think about the same way that we just talked about the unbanked, extending that reach of mobile phones through prepaid. You start to do the same thing, and it's all from a mobile first approach, which is pretty. pretty amazing when you think about it, that a simple technology like allowing me to hit one button or calling one number to pay for a parking meter could ultimately, affect the tax that the city actually brings in, or the economy of a developing nation. How awesome is that?
It's great. So adding on to that, what we did, so our world came full circle around. We went from the developed world to the emerging markets, and then about 2 years back, 2.5 years ago, we renewed our partnership with Nokia Siemens and decided that we're going to jointly work on these NFC initiatives because the market seems to be mature and ready. So we are doing a bunch of pilots with them now. In addition, what we have done is, because we are running these mobile money ecosystems in a bunch of these emerging markets, and we have a good understanding of the developed world and how retail, distribution, and mobile operators in the developed world work, we have been able to provide some very unique applications that allow people to be able to send value from the developed world to the developing world and vice versa. So there are people from India, for example, who send their children to study in the US, right? And these kids come here and they buy prepaid mobile phones, and their parents can send them gifts of airtime. Similarly, a rich cousin living in Montreal could send a gift of airtime to their relative in Haiti, for example, right? So we are enabling transfer of value, but transfer of value where can send a gift of airtime or pay a utility bill for the relative over in the developing world, and these transactions are typically limited to a certain upper limit and the frequency and so on and so forth, and we obviously take great care in terms of anti-money laundering and KYC and so on and so forth. But we find ourselves in this very unique situation where we are able to bridge the gap between the developed and the developing world by providing some of these cross-border transactional services, and that ends up being a very rewarding experience. And I'll give you a small example of that. If you look at Jamaica, for example, the average revenue on the telephony side and prepaid side in Jamaica is about $4 US. A size of an airtime reload in the US is $12 US. One transaction is $12 US, whereas the average revenue per month per user in Jamaica is just $4. So already, you are in a situation where the relative living in the US wants to make it convenient for their friend or family back home to be able to pick up the phone and call anyone they want, right? They don't have to call me. As long as they have the funds in their account to be able to call someone, in the case of need or otherwise, then that's what we want to see. And this service really has helped bring families together. These families where there is diaspora living, and our world is shrinking, right? There's so much of foreign people living in all parts of the world that they have a need to connect and the need to communicate back with their family and friends. And clearly the likes of Facebook and so on and so forth have benefited significantly from this need to connect and communicate. But here is another way by which people can stay connected, by sending each other a gift of airtime. My nephew does well in his math exam, or he does well in his golf game or whatever in India, and they fortunately do not need financial help from us. But for me to just send him a gift of airtime and say, here's
way to go.
You can stay in touch. It's a nice gesture.
So, I mean, let's a few more questions. Pankaj, I think that I'd love to have you back on, because I think we could talk about this forever. But a few more questions just around this is that when you've got the majority of the population of the globe, right, in a concentrated area in developing nations, right? So, developing very quickly, like India, China. I mean, these are behemoths.
Yep.
And a majority of those people who live in India and China have cell phones or smartphones, and the majority of those perhaps are unbanked, don't have a bank account. They deal in cash transactions or it's a subsistence living, but it's obviously a developing subsistence. They're actually growing with that. At what point does the influence of that, kind of a cashless society like what we're talking about here, kind of tip over into North America? Because I talk about this where I say, I think that we're witnessing the the beginning, we'll look back at in history, my kids or my grandkids will look back in history and say, when was the beginning of the end of paper cash and currency, right? When did it become just money, right? Not a rupee, not a US dollar, a Canadian dollar, a British pound, or, it was just money. And it was just a transaction that happened. Is that going to be pulled from developing nations into North America, that kind of cashless society?
I think the use cases clearly are developing very quickly in that part of the world, right? So, whether the current players, as we know, will be able to participate in those ecosystems, I think they will. Mm-hmm. So we can easily expect that all the traditional players on the financial side are going to be are going to have a role. Yeah. However, they will have a add-on role. They will be the second to come into the market, and they will have a role. So I can tell you that if you talk to any immigrant Kenyan living in the US, they will exactly tell you how their relatives are so much more advanced back in Kenya because they are all using mobile phones for mobile banking.
Absolutely.
So there is a lot of cross-pollination that is already in place. I think a lot of US suppliers, including us, are providing solutions for the emerging markets, and we are always looking for what is the right way for us to introduce our services here in North America, because clearly this is the largest market and in the world, and we have to find a way to be able to be viable for this market if we want to grow and build our business. So there is a lot of incentive for innovators like us to be able to bring those experiences and apply those experiences in the right way in our market over here. So I think I had a chance to talk to a very senior executive, a CEO of a mobile operator in the Middle East once, and so when we talked about mobile payments, he gave me the example that he said my grandfather used to pay in kind, right? He used to pay in goats and camels.
Yeah.
My father used to pay by check. I pay by credit card, and my children are going to pay by mobile phone. Yeah. So I think it's a generational thing. I think that when I talk to my 12-year-old and 15-year-old kids about the fact that an Apple computer or a laptop like a MacBook Air used to actually occupy a whole room. When I was writing my first line of code in 1980s, they are shocked. Right?
Yeah.
They are shocked that we did not have mobile phones and so on and so forth. We are ourselves shocked that how did we lead a life without computers? Because I do remember as a consultant delivering my first proposal to a client, hand delivering it, and the whole proposal was typed on a typewriter. Right? So having said that, I think this is a generation we are living at a time when. A lot of invention happened before our time, but a lot of the impact of that invention is happening now.
Yeah.
The ability for doctors to be able to go in to the knee through a camera and be able to see, where the tear in the ligament is and be able to fix it. The ability for a doctor in a very underdeveloped world, like in Afghanistan, a male doctor who cannot go and see a woman patient because of the cultural boundaries that they have. But this woman if she's unwell, through a mobile phone, she's able to reach someone remotely, maybe a woman's voice on the other side, and seek some immediate help, which helps her save her life and or a child's life and so on and so forth. These are real changes that are happening in our lifetime.
It's pretty incredible, isn't it?
The world is coming together faster than you and I can imagine.
The acceleration with what we've got, we don't even know where this is going to land because, as you said, we're living on somebody else's innovation, right? And the stuff that we're building today in 15 or 20 years will have an impact with our kids. Yeah. But when you look a little bit into the future, where are the opportunities that are kind of right in front of you? So, if we were to leave the folks who are still watching or listening to this, if we were to leave them with something that said, these are the trends that we're seeing. This is the spot. This is what's right in front of your nose, the place that you would be focusing as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think at a very high abstract level, I think I would say that there are two areas that we would look for opportunities. One is wherever there is inefficiency in systems, right? Wherever it takes someone a significant amount of time to either pay a bill or get their salary or whatever. So those inefficiencies now, the excuse that we don't have the right systems to take care of these inefficiencies is not existent anymore. The mobile model has changed all of those completely, right? The excuse that emerging markets do not have the wherewithal to pay for such sophisticated inventions, that excuse has gone out of the window given the massive adoption. Look at the price of the drugs that people are using for AIDS and so on and so forth. The prices have come down significantly because there is a much wider market for this. So same thing with mobile phones. I mean, so that to us is the first aspect. Wherever there are inefficiencies in howsoever people do their business, those inefficiencies can now be removed from the system by using a mobile. And the second aspect is, because we are in the payments business, if we are able to take cash out of the ecosystem, you're eliminating black money, you're eliminating all the middlemen who take an unequal or part of the overall payments that are made, and really from government's perspective, they need to know where funds are flowing and who they are flowing to, and so on and so forth. So there is incentive for all the right-minded people to be able to join in and be able to create these ecosystems, and that's where we believe are the biggest opportunities. There will be clearly the big guys are going to jump into this space as they see that the opportunities size is very, very big. So us small players are going to get squished, but hopefully we have interesting technologies and solutions that we have brought to the table that will still be viable, and that these large companies will find useful for them to either acquire or partner with, and so on and so forth. And that's where we see our opportunities.
I love it, Pankaj. I mean, it's such a fascinating thing. If there was one industry that we could follow, that we should follow, that we should put a camera on and watch the impact of, this has to be it. Simply because of the way that it facilitates that seamless transaction, it can buoy an economy, it can raise people out of poverty. And it can do things in a way that you don't even notice it's happening, but you look around and what's been accomplished is a village has grown up, or a country has developed into a powerhouse. And
absolutely,
I love it.
There were 5 million mobile users in the world 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. In 2012, there are going to be 6 billion mobile users.
What an opportunity!
Right. So.
And with the 6 billion mobile users, what you're talking about is an entrepreneurial, an unprecedented entrepreneurial opportunity, not only in North America but around the world, and all driven by mobile.
All driven.
God, I love it. I love it. So, Pankaj, I thank you for doing this. You really appreciate your insight into this market. It's deep, and it's impactful. 10 years inside of this space has obviously given you a great vantage point. How can people find out more about what you guys are up to?
MoreMagic.com is our website. There is a lot of good information available on the website, and there is a contact form, and if people need to reach us, we are a global company. We are deployed in South Pacific, in Asia Pacific, in South Asia, in Africa, in Europe, Latin America, Caribbean, and North America. So we are a small company, but we are everywhere, and it should not be very hard to reach us.
Wow,
I really appreciate your time. Your enthusiasm and your energy is unparalleled, and I hope to have similar interactions with you in future as we see these types of business models and use cases develop for them.
I loved it. Pankaj, thank you so much. I've been speaking with Pankaj Gulati, who's the CEO of MoreMagic. Go to moremagic.com. Go and take a look at what they're doing, and then start to think about the impact of a mobile-first strategy like this in a developing nation where people are getting opportunities that they've never had before. It's been pretty amazing, inspiring what you guys are doing. Pankaj, thank you so much. For you guys who are still watching or listening to this, thank you so much. Very much appreciated. If you have any comments or feedback about this, insight, I'll take it. untethered@gmail.com. And this has been another episode, a thrilling episode of untethered.tv. Thank you all very much. Thanks, Pankaj.
Thank you. Bye-bye.